I think the biggest back and forth we had during that time was, and this went on for a long time, was complexity of puzzles. That was the big discussion.
Thank you. So you were building out the rooms of the house.
Yeah, the first thing I did that I wanted to make sure of was translating stuff between Blender and Unity, because when we made Queen Imperium, it was really hard because it wasn't across everything, and
That
it was a
round trip
nightmare.
was not solid.
Yeah, the round trip was not solid. Everyone wanted to make changes, and then in Unity, it was prefabs within prefabs within prefabs, and just it got out of control really quickly.
Where have I hidden the
Yeah,
overrides
like,
now?
What have we done? How do you override things properly? So I really wanted to make sure that wasn't an issue. So I spent the first maybe 1 or 2 weeks getting that system really locked down, so you could just transfer everything over, make small changes, and have it transfer back in seamlessly. That was my main concern. That and just starting to build the fundamentals of the house, because the game is going to have room shifting and assets being shifted in and out during the game, like not load screens, but during as you're playing. So everything had to be really easy to manage. That was my first major concern for the first 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, was getting file structure and everything down and managing assets.
Because there's a major mechanic of the game that is very inspired by The House of Many Ways, the Diana Wynne Jones book, where how you interact with the door, well, in the book it's how you step through the door changes the room that you get to. But in this case, we liked the idea of how you interact with the door changes it, changes what room you open the door to. And the idea of our small terrace being filled with all of these potential rooms, some good, some great, like, wow, we have extra storage because there's 3 rooms instead of what was just a bedroom. Like that was really fun. But in terms of a video game, it gets really hard because it's just innately not intuitive. If something's a button, you get it. We know how to press buttons. If something is like a puzzle, push block, whatever, you kind of get that interaction method. An interaction method of standing in front of a door and rotating on the spot, and then you open the door, like, unless you're explicitly told to do that, which you do have to be told how to do that, it's just a hard way of, we didn't know if it's going to feel good, if it's going to be fun enough. And so I spent that first week building various door opening puzzles that were very simple, but just making them work. Like, if you stand at a door, look to the right, look to the left, look up, open the door, it's now a different room.
Yeah.
And it's so quiet a mechanic. I really like it.
We can talk about developing the characters, because we were still having discussions. It wasn't all we weren't in our silos yet, just doing our technical stuff and then rejoining at the end. We were talking about characters, in particular Janet de Mornay, kind of thinking back to villainesses that we love.
Yzma, very much Yzma.
Empress New Groove. Delia Dietz, a bit of Delia Dietz from Beetlejuice.
Always
The Tude and Prude.
Addams Family.
Joan Cusack. That's fun. Yeah. I can't remember the name of her character. She has a good name too. Dang it. Yes, we wanted someone like that, like a funny, scary, funny, scary woman. So we were developing that. We were kind of talking about characters who are in the house, expanding that out, and then it's contracted in, but we wanted to have good queer house based on people we knew-ish. I can't think of anything major that came from those discussions. It was just kind of teasing out relationships and things, but nothing major, because I was very I didn't want to spend too much time on this narrative stuff, especially writing multiple characters, because eventually you spend a lot of time and you're like, oh, there's no space for 3 or 4 characters,
Yeah.
5 characters or something, you know, because we were talking about having like things like someone that you called up for clues to go back to clues. Like we were talking about calling up and having a legal help
helpline.
center. There might be people downstairs who are in the
4
cafe.
housemates.
4 housemates. It's like that's not going to happen. It's
Alternate people living in the
like
house.
all this stuff. So I didn't want to go too much into script writing or anything like that, and because that stuff just tends to get cut. So that was that, and we didn't really have any major bumps during that time. I guess because we were waiting to implement things in a grey box or a slice or whatever. I think the biggest back and forth we had during that time was, and this went on for a long time, was complexity of puzzles. That was the big discussion.
Yeah, so while I was making the puzzles, of course I was talking about how it's not intuitive, so you'll need like one of your housemates to remind you or explain to you or something how to get to maybe one of the rooms that you've always known about in the house. So you know that sometimes spinning around is an option, sometimes pressing the light switch 3 times is an option, just these strange ways. And so we came up with this really fun idea, because it's all about landlord overreach and renters' rights. One of the ways that you kind of can talk about that is how the legal system is very much on the side of landlords. And even though as a renter you're given the lease agreement, it's in legalese, and unless you can afford a lawyer, you don't know what kind of traps you're signing. And so playing with that idea of the hint manual, kind of like what it sounds like Tunic's in-game manual is, except this is a dull lease agreement you have to get through to try and find the hints, which I love. But then it's also, just to make it fun, is all Janet de Mornay's narcissistic autobiography. So she's managed to convince her lawyer to write an autobiography with the information somehow hidden inside it.
Yeah, and I like it. I like the idea of it being kind of a scrapbook that she's put together.
Absolutely.
Of newspaper
Adds
clippings and stuff, because she was quite famous back in the day.
Back in the day.
And now, she's just making you read about her. You have to read about her, know about her to be able to use your house. Be able to get around your house.
Oh, that self-obsession.
Yeah.
She's just so unique. As renters, you need to conform to her.
Yeah.
And her ego.
Yeah.
Going from the puzzle, I wanted to have the hints like 3 steps removed, because I really enjoy lateral thinking in puzzles. And so there'd be like a drop of a hint in the lease that then hints to something on one of the walls, that then if you cross-reference that with what's written on the lease, that would then actually give you the directions to interact with this door, and that then opens the door. And I'm still very passionate about that. I still think that's really fun and can be really clever and cool. But maybe you just make it first. I think we just make it first. And if we want to, we have options for a hard mode if we have capacity and need.
Yeah, I think the thing, and I think I've said this elsewhere, is the amount of testing that we have to do to get that working. Mm-hmm. And because we're making a cinematic game that's horror as well, it's like you can't test it on the same person again and again like we did with Cream Empyrean.
Yeah, I think ultimately we were pretty. It was a low key happy with the door puzzles.
Yeah, and the house came together pretty well.
Yeah.
Like the thing I was worried about with the prefabbing and having a good solid grounding in Blender to arrange everything and organize the files worked out quite well. So it was all pretty smooth. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll probably just cut on that.